Hey guys, this is Chris Monk at Highline Guitars, and you're watching episode 58 from the Luthier's Workbench. In this episode, I'm going to cover a couple of topics. The first one is leveling and crowning frets. Do we really need to do this on a brand new guitar neck? This was actually a question that popped up on one of my other videos. A viewer was asking, if you've done everything correctly, why would you have to level the frets? They should be level because they were installed properly. The fact that you're having to level them and recrown them would seem to indicate that you're doing a sloppy job of installing the frets. Well, in theory, yes, that's true. But in reality, it's a little bit more complicated than that. So this is a guitar that I'm currently working on, and I'll be installing frets on this fairly soon. So why would you have to recrown frets on a brand new guitar neck? Well, I think one of the answers that another viewer gave was, we're dealing with wood here. And even though wood is a wonderful material to work with, it isn't perfect. And it's susceptible to temperature and humidity changes, which can cause it to distort its shape. And because of that, when you install the frets, there's a good chance that they aren't going to all be perfectly level because the surface that they're installed into isn't perfectly level. So, but that still doesn't answer, why not make the surface perfectly level right before you install the frets? Well, another issue that comes up is the fret wire itself. Even though it's manufactured to a very high level of precision, it isn't always perfect over its entire length of wire. And the method that you use to install the frets can itself distort the top of those the fret wire. For example, if you're tapping them in with a fret hammer and you're using nickel silver fret wire, you can actually dent the tops of the frets so that they don't all match, and you have to go back in and level it and then recrown it, which is reshaping that top to get them consistent and perfect. Well, if you do everything really perfectly and do it right, there's a good chance that you're going to be able to absolutely minimize the amount of leveling and recrowning that you have to do. And what I have found is, what I like to do is after I finish building the guitar, and I'm talking about getting it all the way, I'll install the frets, do all the finish, install the pickups, the electronics, tuners, everything. I'll go ahead and I'll string up the guitar. I'll set the action. I'll tune it, intonate it, get everything exactly as if I was about to ship the guitar out. And I do all this before I do any leveling. And then I'll play the guitar. And this tells me how close or how far away I am from having perfectly level frets. Usually, and this is something that has taken me years to develop this skill, is I can actually get it to the point where the frets are almost perfectly level. There may be one or two along the length of the fretboard that aren't, that may be higher than the others or lower. And in that case, I can find it when I play the guitar. After it's been strung up, action is set, the strings are tuned and intonated, and I play it in the normal playing position. If there's a problem with a fret, I'll find it pretty quickly as I play it, because I'll start to get some string buzz on whatever the offending fret is. So, and as a result, I don't have to necessarily do a full scale, complete level job on the entire fretboard. Instead, I can just do some spot leveling on just the offending fret. That saves me a tremendous amount of time, and time is money. So how do I do this? How can I get a fret installation that's so perfect that it barely needs any fret leveling and recrowning? Well, it starts out with how the neck is made, and I make sure that the blank, especially since I always glue my fretboards onto the neck itself, I make sure that surface has been precision ground or milled. It has to be absolutely dead flat. from end to end, from side to side. Same thing with the back of my fretboard blank. The two have to mate up perfectly. There can be no high or low spots. It's got to be perfectly precise. Then the radius of the fretboard has to be generated to perfection. In this case, I've got a 12-inch radius fretboard. And what I'll do is, after I have installed the fretboard, usually because I'm using CNC when I make my fretboards, I'll make sure that the radius has been cut before I glue it down. In fact, the slots, the radius, even the marker dots are all done before I glue the fretboard onto the neck. But then what I'll do is I'll use this is just a fret radius gauge, and this one has a 7 1/4, 9 1/2, 10, and 12-inch radius. And since this is a 12-inch radius fretboard, I'll hold it up to a bright light, and then I'll just slide the radius gauge all the way along. And what I'm looking for is light leakage. You know, if I see any light seeping through, then I know there's a problem with the radius, and I have to work on that area to get it accurate. I also use a straight edge that has one side precision ground, and again I'll hold it up to a bright light and I'll set that straight edge on there, and I'm looking to make sure from one side to the other that the fretboard is perfectly consistent from end to end with no high and low spots. And a lot of times it takes quite a bit of work to get it absolutely perfectly accurate. Usually when producing a radius, if you're holding your gauge to it, you'll notice sometimes the center area along the center line may be flat and there's light leaking under, or the edges could be turned down, which you'll see light seeping through on the edges. So you have to make sure that radius is consistent, and that can take a lot of skill and effort to do that. You have to be able to spot sand in just those areas where there's a problem to get that radius right, and it's not easy to do, but once you have that radius perfectly level, then you can go back and you can install the frets. And of course you want to make sure that your slots are deep enough to handle the fret tang. If there's any parts of that slot that are too high, when you press the fret in or pound the fret in, it's going to bottom out and you're going to have a part of that fret wire sticking up too high. So you want to make sure that the fret slot is deep enough to handle the full tang. The other thing you need to do is when you install the frets, if you're hammering them in, you just want to tap them in, just enough force to push the fret wire in. This is especially true with nickel silver frets because it's softer material, and if you hit it too hard or if you're using the wrong kind of hammer, you can actually ding and dent the tops of your frets so that they're lumpy and none of them are going to be consistent, and that's just going to add to the amount of work you have to do to get them level. I like to press my frets in. I use an arbor press with a caul and the appropriate radius insert to press those frets in. And I also use a little bit of water thin CA glue, which holds the fret dead tight to the fretboard so that the ends won't lift up or the center won't lift up. When it's done, I'll bevel the edges. And then, like I said, I'll finish building the guitar, apply the finish, all the components. Then I'll string it up, set the action, tune it, intonate it, and then play it. And usually, if I'm lucky, I may only have 1 or 2 frets which are causing some issues with buzzing, and then I'll just spot level those, spot crown them, repolish them, and I'm good to go. I don't necessarily have to do an entire neck. Now, that doesn't mean that it always happens that way, and it's important to understand that you should never just assume that if you're doing everything correctly, it's going to be perfect, because we're talking about thousandths of an inch tolerances here. So all it takes is for a fret to be slightly higher than the one next to it, and you could have problems. So you should go into it expecting to have to do a full level. But before you do that, string it up and see what happens. You may find that the entire front of your fretboard up to the 12th fret is perfect. And then maybe 1 or 2 frets after the 12th fret are a little bit higher or a little bit lower and need some, you need to do a little bit of work on it. But don't think that you are always going to have to grind down all your frets without checking it. I think that's such a waste of time. Check it first. Make sure that you actually have to do a full fret level and recrown before you actually do it. Because you may find it isn't always going to be necessary to have to do it that way. This is just a quick update on what I'm currently working on here at the Highline Guitars workshop. This is a 6-string Osiris build that I'm doing, and as you can see, it has a very subtle carved top. What I did was I created a G-code file. Well, first I did a 3D design in full scale of this carved top, and then I did the G-code for it and carved this on my CNC machine. This took about probably 45 minutes to carve the whole top, and it came out really smooth. And what I was after was a very subtle carved top. I didn't really want to do anything overly pronounced, like, for example, the Les Paul and some of the PRS designs that can really be shapy. And I just wanted something very subtle, kind of like the Benedetto Bennies. They have a very subtle, you can almost barely detect it, and I just think that that's so classy looking. And it's a bolt-in neck, of course, and right now it's just sitting in there. This is Eastern Rock Maple. The fretboard is Chechen, which is, it's not a true rosewood, but it is very hard, very dense, and it has a beautiful grain pattern that has a lot of very subtle color in it. So what I'm thinking I will do with this is finish the body by, I'm thinking what I'm going to do is put down a very, very dark brown stain first. And then I'll let that dry, and then I'll sand it back so that the stain is just left in the grain, and will make that grain really stand out. Then I'll fill the grain with a clear filler, and then I'll probably just put an amber polyurethane over the top to warm it up a little bit, so it should look pretty cool. But that's what I'm working on right now in the shop. Now, when I'm not in the shop working on guitars, I can usually be found here at my computer designing guitars. And I have, along with my HighlineGuitars.com website, I also have another business. It's eGuitarPlans.com. And I'll put links to all these down in the description below. Just click Show Me, and you'll find those links. But on the eGuitar Plans side of things, what I've done is, years ago I discovered I had created literally hundreds of guitar designs, and I decided that I would create a website where I could sell some of my better designs. I would make those available as downloadable PDF files for a really affordable price. So I created eGuitar Plans, and it's just been kind of chugging along on its own without me doing that much to it for a number of years. And a lot of folks have asked me to do a bass guitar plan, so I've decided to create a bass guitar and offer that plan on eGuitar Plans. So you can go to the website, and I have created this plan, which you can purchase. It's only $8, and if you buy it, you get an email with a link to download the PDF file. So that's something you can check out. And you can also pop over to my Highline Guitars website, which I've completely redesigned to make it a little bit easier to navigate. So that's pretty much an update on what's happening with Highline guitars and e-guitar plans. As you can see, there's a lot of different things going on, and as it stands right now, I am the only employee, so I probably have a little bit more on my plate than I'd like to. But until the next episode, I hope you get a chance to get out there and to your own shop and maybe do a little bit of work, or we'll talk to you soon.